Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a special episode of My Next Question, National Jewelers webinar series sponsored by Rdi Diamonds. Today's session is hosted by Senior Editor Gemstones, Brecken Branstrator, Senior Editor Fashion, Ashley Davis, and Associate Editor News, Lenore Fedow, and myself, Editor-in-Chief, Michelle Graff. Before the other editors and I get things started, I just want to let all our attendees know that if you have a question, you can type it in at the Zoom Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. I'll be back on at the end of the discussion to facilitate the Q&A. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Friday, March 12th. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today.
Having us.
I didn't mention the intro, but I did say it was a special episode. So this is the subject of today's episode is the four of us looking back on a year in lockdown. So here in New York, it was almost a year ago that everything closed down. It was actually Friday, March 20th of 2020 that Governor Cuomo gave the order to close non-essential businesses. And now it's March 9th, 2021, so we're almost at a year. What did you initially expect for the jewelry industry in the time frame of things, quote, returning to normal, shows resuming, jewelry stores reopening, us kind of like taking up our normal schedule of appointments, events, et cetera? What did everybody initially think like this time last year? And Brecken, I'm going to start with you.
I think, crazy it is to think about now. I think my initial thought was that we'd be back in within, a matter of, I think, weeks. I think we talk a lot about when we were packing up our office and, we were saying, okay, what do we need for like 3 weeks of working from home? So I think, not in my wildest dreams did I think that we wouldn't be going to the summer shows, and certainly not the second half of the year. I thought, in my head, Vegas was still just going on and stores would be reopening in time for summer, which is sort of wild to think about now,
Yeah. Lenore?
Yeah, I definitely didn't see it lasting this long. I'm with Brecken that I really thought by the summer we would really be back in the swing of things. I remember in New York, I've been in New York the whole time. In the very early stages, I remember the governor saying that if we could slow the spread, we might be able to like stop the shutdown altogether. Like there was this mantra, I think it was like 14 days to flatten the curve. And then we would like start getting, back to normal. So yeah, I really thought by the summer that we would be back to the shows, back in the office, and obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah, Ashley, what were your thoughts a year ago? Do you recall?
I do. I remember specifically in the office that we were talking about COVID and Lenore said, well, how are we going to have the Vegas shows if Las Vegas doesn't allow groups? And I just remember saying, oh, that would never happen. There's way too much money at stake. It was just my experience that the economy always comes first. We don't shut down all the way. Mm-hmm. I thought we would be at home for 2 weeks. And honestly, I feel like I was very in denial for a long time of just how long we would continue to be at home.
Yeah, my memories of this time is that I was in Florida right before the shutdown last year at my parents' house. And I remember I took a couple of days off. I remember the day before I logged off, I said something. I was like, do you guys think we're writing enough about the coronavirus? Like, are we covering this enough? And everybody was like, yeah, like this is overseas. Like, this is fine. Like, it's just something here a little bit. And like, nobody saw it coming at all. And then my other memory of this time last year is, so National Jeweler, people on this call probably know, but is owned by Jewelers of America. So Jewelers of America, you'll all remember, did those early in the pandemic happy hours. People would get on every Friday at 4:00 and have a drink and we'd see everyone. And we'd remember, I don't know if you remember this, but we were taking all these bets about when the office would reopen. And I think I said July, after July 4th. And everybody was like, no, it's going to be way before then. People were betting Memorial Day weekend. And then other people were saying like after Vegas. And then I remember for a long time, we didn't know what was going to happen with the Vegas shows. And I was with Ashley. I was like, no, like they're not going to cancel those shows.
Right.
And like, here we are a year later and there's Vegas shows, but they're not happening till August. So, but we'll talk more about that later. So at some point, we all realized that we wouldn't be returning to normal anytime soon. Businesses learn to adapt. We all learned to adapt. I mean, this webinar series here was born out of the pandemic. So there are a few stories of retail innovation and adaptation elsewhere in the industry that really stick out in my mind from last year. And I want to talk to you, I want you each talk a little bit about the ones you authored. And Ashley, I'm going to start with you. January 2021, you wrote something about a retailer called The Last Line doing the Year of the Ear. And I thought this was so cool. And I go back to this story a lot. Can you tell everyone a little bit about that for people who might have missed it? And I'm going to drop the link in the chat as well.
Yeah, so The Last Line has really made its mark by being a direct-to-consumer company. So the price that you would typically be wholesaling jewelry, they're offering fine jewelry at those prices. And they have a store now. At first they were e-commerce only and just have really great social media, like a really great web presence, and have invested heavily into that. So kind of something cute that they did for this year was to offer a subscription service where people could sign up and have a monthly edit of earrings sent to them. And it's not cheap. I think the price for the year is somewhere around $20,000, but even just as a promotional element, I think it's just really clever in offering something exciting. And also it really just speaks to the trend of multiple ear piercings and people wanting to know, how do I curate my jewelry and how do I look like the people I see on Instagram with like the really cool ear piercings and the different layering and styling. And I think it just really speaks to that sort of do it yourself, arrange it yourself idea about jewelry and how casual jewelry has become, which has been amazing during the pandemic, because maybe a woman who was going to need several dresses for big events in her calendar, obviously she wasn't going to buy that dress if she wasn't going somewhere, but she still wants to wear jewelry around the house. And that's something that fine jewelry has been able to do really well during the pandemic over fashion.
Yeah, there's
which
something
is surprising to me. Honestly, like, that was something I learned throughout the year. I didn't know if people would still be shopping that way.
There's something about putting on jewelry that makes me feel like a human being again. And it's like even a level above like putting on pants that button. You know what I mean? Like when I put on my jewelry, I feel like myself again. Like there's something about it that makes me feel good. I feel attractive. And I feel like I'm connecting with that. You know, like we're all kind of adrift in this crazy time. Like I feel like, okay, like I've got my watch on, I've got earrings on, you know, I'm taking advantage of my multiple piercings. Like it makes me feel normal again. And I think that's what people strive for. Ashley, I also think that story is interesting. I think subscription model is going to become more and more common. We saw that subscription model with The Last Line. And then Brecken, this week you wrote about Lux Rocks, which is a subscription model for mineral collectors. And then Ashley, tomorrow, I mean, not to spoil tomorrow's newsletter, but you're writing about Breitling doing a subscription service. And I think there's something people like about having things curated for them, having selected for them, and just have them come. And it's something to look forward to. And I mean, we see it, obviously, people love Birchbox. And what's the one with clothes?
Stitch Fix.
Stitch Fix. My sister-in-law does Stitch Fix because she has a 4-year-old and she doesn't dare to even try to take him shopping. So I think there's something people like about it. It's curated for you. It's done. It arrives. Something to look forward to. So I would be curious to see if there's more subscription models. Now, Brecken, I want to talk to you. We touched on this a little bit, but you wrote an article last month, I think, called How the Colored Stone Market is Making Up for No Tucson. So do you want to talk a little bit about what it was like as the senior editor covering colored gemstones for there to be no Tucson shows this year? And again, I'm going to drop this link in the chat as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was really interesting for me because colored stones, you know, I think Tucson might have been one of the very last sort of big industry events to happen last year, which is sort of crazy because all 2020, I would forget that I had gone somewhere and that we had had this big chance for all this market activity to happen, you know, and the fact that we were all there and then within a month, things had just sort of blown up. So it was interesting because when it rolled around to this year, I was thinking, all of these businesses have had a year to adapt. So what's going to be the effect of this? Will it really be anything? And it sort of sounded like it was, something we had heard a lot of last year, which is that the businesses that sort of saw the writing on the wall very quickly and either already had e-commerce or were already trending that way, were able to very quickly make an adjustment. And that was true for colored stones as well. But I think it marked such a pivotal point for the colored stone world because they're a little bit slower to adapt. I mean, it's hard for all products in this space to be photographed, and you don't necessarily want to make a purchase of a colored stone without seeing it in person, but out of necessity, people were buying. And I did hear plenty of people tell me for this story that 2020 was, one of their strongest years ever, that people were ready to buy, so that Tucson not having one this year didn't have quite the impact that it might have had it come, fallen within earlier pandemic last year, because they had already made these adjustments. People were buying. Right. There were things like they weren't trying to, there was a lot of loyalty to customers. So they weren't trying to, get the lowest prices. They were just buying. They wanted to keep things moving. A lot of adjustments towards things like live Instagrams and live Facebooks, where they were, literally virtual Tucson. So they might have their products in front of them and they would hold the same sort of presentation as they did, they would have in person. So it was pretty interesting to see that change and how that worked for them this year. I think it's going to mean big things for 2021.
No, I mean, you're right. That was the last trade show we had. So they definitely had a year to sit there and say, I don't know if this is going to happen next year. Like, we need to figure out a way to adapt.
Right, exactly. And 2020, I forget what year, 2020 Tucson for so many people was such a good year. It was like there was so much buzz for it. So they were sort of rolling off this strong thing, and they just had, I think they were really, the momentum was really good for them to get there too. So.
Lenore, let's talk a little bit about something you've been covering since the beginning of the pandemic that a lot of retailers are familiar with, the Paycheck Protection Program. Not the most exciting thing, but it's very important. And I want to talk to our listeners today a little bit about how that started and where we kind of are with it now. We just wrote an article, and I'm going to drop that link to the chat, about the most recent updates, which are really targeted at micro businesses, very small companies.
Yeah. So I've been covering the Paycheck Protection Program from the beginning. Definitely not the most fun and exciting stories. They're probably some of the most complex stories that I work on, just because there's so much to read through. But I think for a lot of these small businesses, the loans have been really crucial. So it's really important to me that I look through everything that's available and get these stories right. I think the program has just been confusing from the jump. And that's coming from someone who has all day to sit down and look at these documents and read them over and call up experts and ask all these questions. So I can't imagine how someone can do that and also try to run their business. So I really feel for the small business owners who are trying to navigate this program. So like you had said, the most recent changes to the program were to make sure that the money goes to the really small businesses, because that's not always been the case. Early in the program, there were all of these stories going around about these much larger businesses like Shake Shack and Ruth's Chris Steakhouse that were receiving these really huge loans. And the backlash was so harsh and so immediate that they wound up having to apologize and returning the money. So these most recent changes are prioritizing especially small businesses, those with 20 employees or fewer. So they set aside this 14-day period where only these businesses can apply. And that period ends tomorrow, actually. So it ends March 10th. So the Small Business Administration had said that these businesses with 20 employees or fewer, they account for about 98% of all small businesses in the country. But when you look at where the money went, they got about 45% of it, so not even half.
Wow.
Right. So this update is looking to correct that. There is changes that make it easier for people who are self-employed to apply. Previously, there was some issue with the loan calculation, and you had people being approved for loans as little as like $1. So that was very frustrating for, your self-employed, your sole proprietors, people like that. Mm-hmm. And there has also been clearer guidance for small business owners who are not citizens, but they're lawful U.S. residents. So there was a lot of confusion about that. So these new changes give you some more clear guidance on that. And then another thing that they changed was that people who were behind on student loans, federal student loans, are now eligible. And previously that wasn't the case. And I mean, when you consider that millions of Americans have student loans and are also delinquent on student loans, I mean, it's a real problem, and it was a real gap that this program wasn't filling.
Right.
So,
Because obviously if they're needing a loan for their small business, they're not in a position, like probably not in a financial position. Like, it's understandable that they've fallen behind on their student loans. So don't punish them further.
right, exactly. Yeah, so hopefully these new updates to the program, they're able to address some of those issues. And I think the deadline to apply for anyone who's looking to apply to the program is March 31st.
Well, thank you very much. And again, that link is in the chat. If anyone, Lenore did an excellent article that ran last week, I believe, on the updates to the Paycheck Protection Program. So looking ahead to the rest of 2020. So we now have some grounding in 2021. We know that the major Las Vegas trade shows, and by major, I mean JCK, Couture, have picked new dates. They're late August. They're right around somebody's birthday. We won't say who, but it's somebody on this call. So what are the odds, in your opinion, that these shows will happen? Will you personally go? How many other people will go? And what do you think it's going to be like? And Ashley, I'm going to start with you.
So because at the beginning of the pandemic, I was so just blissfully ignorant about what was coming. I feel like I predicted everything wrong. So I've kind of switched gears and I've become very pessimistic. And I've been assuming, okay, so you're not going to get the vaccine for a very long time. I mean, just yesterday, I was having a conversation with somebody. Many people, I'm currently in Florida, and many people have insisted that I can get a vaccine in Florida, but I cannot get a vaccine in Florida right now. I don't qualify. If I qualify, I am ready to be up and running, if I'm fully vaccinated rather, and to go do any industry event. It is not worth it to me if I am not vaccinated. As someone who has had COVID and doesn't want it again, and it is possible to get it again.
Right, because there are new strains now too.
So it's funny because I do feel like Vegas is really the talk of the industry right now. What people are saying to me is that international exhibitors won't be able to get vaccinated in time, likely, and will be less interested in going to Vegas. Also, it's such a big financial investment that I feel a lot of companies don't want to invest so heavily if they are unsure of the turnout. So I'm hearing pessimistic things about Vegas, but then a lot of people saying we really need a big event like this for buying purposes, but people are doing just fine without. A designer told me the other day that she's getting new accounts, big accounts that have, for the first, new accounts, they might have interacted with her jewelry somewhere before, but they are having Zoom appointments and they are placing real orders without having the jewelry in their hands. So I kind of think that says it all.
Interesting. Brecken, thoughts on Las Vegas? Then the dates, for anyone that doesn't know, are around August 24th to the 29th, I believe. I think.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a tough one, but I think I'm sort of the opposite of Ashley, where I don't know. I think that I would sort of reiterate a lot of what she said, which is that when I was talking to people for the Tucson story, I was just talking about in sort of an international scope. A lot of people in Bangkok and Hong Kong were saying, no way do we think we're coming for anything in 2021. But when I was talking to a lot of domestic dealers, they were saying, yeah, we have people who are super anxious to get back into these things, and not only to restock, but just to get in front of people. We're such a connected industry that I think American businesses are anxious to do it. So I do feel like there's a good chance that they'll go on, whether or not that's in a capacity that it is anywhere close to what it was. I assume that they'll still have to have every safety measure in place and how they'll control, crowds, because it really will come down to how many people are vaccinated by then, right? And whether or not the entire country is in fact vaccinated by May. or, you know, what's happening outside of the country will play such a huge part in that. So I feel like there is a good chance of them happening. I just don't think that it'll be, you know, anywhere near the scope of what we're used to.
Okay. Lenore, thoughts? Because Lenore, this night, so 2020 would have been your second Vegas.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I've only been to Vegas once before. I know you guys have gone a bunch of times. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's definitely possible. I think it's a lot of it is like anything, a lot of it is going to depend on the vaccine rollout. And, you know, if everyone is able to get vaccinated by May, which I'm certainly hoping for, I think that the shows are possible in late August. The initial dates I did not see happening at all.
You mean the June dates?
Yeah, I did not see that happening.
Yeah, I think they didn't either.
I definitely didn't see that happening, but now that it's been moved to late August, if the vaccine rollout stays on track the way it has been, I could see that happening. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I would say I too was initially 50-50 on those shows, and those shows happening in August, but I think as everybody's mentioned, so I think just for clarity's sake, I believe that what President Biden has said is that there will be enough vaccine for everyone by May. I don't think he's promising that everybody is going to be vaccinated by May. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I understood his announcement. And then someone told me in New York that Bill de Blasio is saying everyone in New York City will be vaccinated by April. And I don't see that happening at all, but my friends, I did not research this. My friends told me that over the weekend. I need to look into this. So before President Biden made that announcement, I was about 50-50 on the Vegas shows. Now I'm about 80%. I think they're going to happen, 20 maybe not. But I agree that it's not going to be the scale we're used to. And I also agree with the point that both Ashley and Brecken made about what about people coming from other countries. And I think it also, Ashley, you brought up this really interesting point. It's kind of be like, I'll go if you go. Well, I'll go if you go. Well, you know what I mean? It's going to be a little bit of a, you know, well, I'll go if there's going to be a lot of people there. Well, you know what I mean? People are going to have to see how many other people are doing it and how many buyers are going to come if they're going to want to make that investment. But I think there is, like, I do get a sense, I do get a sense that people in general, not just with trade shows, are very anxious to get back to normal, and that, you know, people miss seeing each other, like not just in a sense of I miss seeing my family, but in a sense of people miss seeing their colleagues too. And people want, or I think are dying for that sense to return to normal. So I think that could be a draw too. I think people, myself included, definitely have a bit of isolation pandemic fatigue, which is totally understandable at this point. I'm sorry, Ashley, were you going to say something else? So here's a question. What show or industry event are you most anxious? Like when everything's back to normal, you're vaccinated, you feel totally comfortable. What show or industry event are you most anxious to attend again and to go to? And Lenore, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure. So going back to what you had said before, I've only been to Vegas once before. So it was my first and only Vegas. I think that was in 2019. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. The first year I went, I tagged along with Michelle because I was still fairly new. And she let me walk around with her all day and, you know, showed me around. But I'm really looking forward to experiencing it on my own, you know, setting up my own agenda of things I would like to see and people and events I would like to go to. So yeah, I would say I'm most looking forward to the Vegas shows.
Okay. All right. Brecken?
Gotta be Tucson for me. I mean, right around the holidays, I was definitely missing, you know, seeing people at the Christmas parties and the holiday parties. And when we came back, I was missing getting dressed up for Gem Awards for sure. But I think what crushed me the most was no Tucson. And it's not just because it gets me out of this city in February to the desert. But I just, you know, it's such an important place to network and meet people and for me to learn a lot. So, I mean, hands down, Tucson 2022, I think is going to be a big blowout event. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is nice to go to, because I usually go to Centurion. It's nice to go to Arizona in like January, February. Ashley, what event are you most looking forward to?
I mean, at this point, I think I really just miss market appointments around New York City the most. and just kind of that market time, like right after Fashion Month, when everyone's like has the collections like back in New York City, and just running around and seeing that, and running uptown to auction previews and things like that. I also am, really looking forward to whenever the next couture is that I attend and am vaccinated for, just because couture is such a huge concentration of really, really good jewelry. And then there's such a lovely camaraderie there, and just with people just so excited to reconnect. So,
and spending a couple days,
everything I do, I guess.
Everything. And spending a couple days at the Winter Encore is not a terrible assignment either.
No, not at all.
For me, I'd have to say it's AGS Conclave, even though I don't go every year. Like, that's the thing I most want to do when this is over. I just really enjoy Conclave. I enjoy Conclave because I love connecting with all the retailers. And I don't know, and it's just like, it's contained, so it's not like, sometimes Vegas can feel like too much because you're trying to run to different shows. Conclave's like, you're in the hotel, sessions every day, the speakers are always excellent. I love connecting with all those retailers, and this year Conclave is September, I believe, and it's in Dallas. So I also have, selfishly, I also have family in Dallas, so that's like another draw for me. Like, I would like, if all is well in September, I would very much like to go to Conclave in Dallas and reconnect with my family whom I haven't seen in a year, and reconnect with all those retailers. It's strange because I've done this now this is my 14th year at National Jeweler. And, some of these people in the industry, I see more than I see my family, and I haven't seen anyone in over a year. And it's very strange.
It is so weird to sort of be keeping up. I mean, we keep up with people a lot on social media anyway, but for now to be sort of exclusively that, even the New York people, and Ashley's point, like, the amount of, especially for her that she's running around, that, things we go to not be going to them and to not be touching product and just chatting with people is bizarre. And I think it just makes you realize how connected we all are in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Zoom is great, but there's some things I think Zoom can't replace. So the next question is a little bit more geared towards Ashley. What trends have been most prevalent during the pandemic? And Lenore or Brecken, if you want to chime in with thoughts about color gemstone trends or retail trends, that's fine too. But Ashley, I'll start with you. So jewelry trends during the pandemic, what have you seen?
So for trends, in addition to a lot of the layering and the kind of more is more feeling of wearing lots of necklaces and lots of bracelets and tons of like different mismatched studs and hoops, it's also been really interesting to see that the trends have almost reverted back to more basic, but then they'll be really interesting and beautiful. So what I mean by that is any type of personalized jewelry. So like a birthstone or an initial, which does not sound very exciting when you say it, but then just seeing what different designers do with it is what makes it so incredible. Like, if you told me that I would get excited about a piece of initial jewelry, I don't think I would have believed you. But in recent months, like maybe even just this year, Brett Neal has come out with this collection of new initial jewelry pieces. And the font that she created is just so whimsical and fun and colorful, like everything that she does. And they're just so beautiful, and I desperately want one. So it's really been about seeing designers put their own special artistry and point of view into a really basic category like that.
Right. I also really like Marla Aaron's initials, which I think you wrote about.
Yeah, those are amazing as well. I mean, yeah, with her concept of being able to hook it onto her other pieces, they're really amazing and just kind of a no-brainer. I mean, I think the benefit of having pieces like that in collection is we are just programmed to automatically want the one that's ours. So whether it's our birthstone that we see or our initial, and then also I think that a really fantastic kind of like strategy or excuse for getting yourself jewelry is like to get someone's name that's special to you. And there's so many people who will do that, and they'll get their significant other's name And it's so brilliant because they just got themselves a piece of jewelry, but everybody's happy about it.
Or pet names. You could do pet names.
Pet name.
Brecken or Lenore, do you have any thoughts about trends retail or colored stone wise?
I mean, not too much more than I think what Ashley was saying. I think I was just hearing a lot of, that people, while they were spending, they were just being a lot more, I think this was even the headline of one of mine, purposeful purchasing. So people were spending, but they really were flocking towards the stone that really spoke to them, whether that was not one of the big three, it was, a different stone or fantasy cuts, designer cuts. Those are really speaking to people as well. So just stuff that is really speaking to their personal style. And the same with diamonds, reused family heirloom diamonds, putting them in new stones. So, bringing that meaningful and still having like a modern look was also very popular.
The one retail trend that sticks out to me that I think will live past this pandemic has been retailers doing a really good job of blending in-store and online shopping, whether that's buy online, pick up in store, or they're doing curbside pickup. I think that's a trend that's definitely trending now because of the situation we're in. But I think now that people are seeing all of the shopping options available to them and different levels of convenience, I think it'll stick around.
Yeah. I mean, things like curbside pickup, like why not? I mean, even if you can come in the store and browse, maybe you don't have time or you don't want to. And, if you know what you want, why, and you can pick it out, why not just have it brought to your car? And I mean, we've talked about this a little before. I mean, I think it's a trend that'll extend, into things like grocery shopping. Like if you can use an app to grocery shop and have it delivered or just have it all put in the trunk of your car, why are people going to spend time pushing a cart around the grocery store anymore?
Definitely.
Right.
So what is the biggest lesson you've learned about fine jewelry and or the jewelry industry in the past year?
I think.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Lenore.
I think building on what I was saying earlier, I think that the jewelry industry is a lot more adaptable than I would have imagined. And I say this with love, but I know that not everyone in the industry is especially tech savvy. So I was a little bit concerned about some of these smaller retailers when we were seeing a shift to more online shopping. But I think it's been really encouraging to see how many of these retailers are making it work. And, from the people that I've spoken to are having an even better year this year than last year because they were able to adapt really quickly to the situation. So yeah, I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned.
I'll kind of piggyback off of that. I think that the tech aspect can be so overwhelming, especially for a business that deals with trades that have been passed down through generations, that deals with this rarefied knowledge, which sounds, like such a different realm from tech and social media. But the good thing about retailers and designers is that they're already so great at customer service that once they do transition it to online and properly invest in it so that everything's functioning well enough, they do really, really well. I immediately thought that any kind of luxury category would be in a lot of trouble in 2020. But then with fine jewelry consumers unable to travel and take their luxury vacations and unable to really spend money on their wardrobes in the same way, fine jewelry just did so well. And so many designers and stores said that they had their best years yet. So I've just been so happy to see the resilience and just the way that people in fine jewelry didn't really break. Even when their stores were initially shut down, they were like, okay, we're in their distance and wearing our masks and fulfilling our online orders, and we're starting a construction project to renovate something in our store. Like, nobody relaxed. No one really took a break. And everyone, well, I shouldn't say everyone, so many people have come out really well on the other side. So, luckily gold is valuable and gems are valuable, and these things have a lot more value in our economy than other things. So I'm just really excited to see what jewelers do next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the exact same words. I mean, to reiterate what you guys said, which is such a good point, is that my first thought was the adaptability of the industry and the resilience that they showed. I mean, just the way everyone pivoted. Like Ashley said, there was never any question. As soon as the stores were open, they were finding a way to do it safely. They were finding ways of doing the online events, like Lenore was saying, sort of blending all of these. And there's so many things that could have put sort of a stopper to it. Things like even as small as, I think when I was talking to one of the gem cutters for the Tucson story, he was saying, now suddenly, you're offering online events, but then you have to think about shipping. So what kind of rules do you give them for shipping? Because this is also the first time that they're seeing these stones in person. So, offering shipping sales and that kind of thing, and just the new skill set that everyone had to learn, I think, to also take everything online was just really admirable. And it's, sort of easy to talk to everyone and ask them what's going on, but for all of them to really push forward was quite amazing to watch. So it's nice to hear that so many people came out so much stronger in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo all of that. I think that, this could have been a time where people just threw up their hands and said, oh, well, this isn't going to work, I'm giving up. And nobody did that. People said, okay, like the old way of doing business isn't going to work anymore. They became pioneers. I'm going to chart a new course. And it's something that had to happen eventually, but this, in my mind, kind of accelerated it and forced it. And I was happy to see so many people using their time in lockdown productively. I mean, look at us, even here. I mean, this is an announcement, but National Jeweler is launching a new website next week. It's a redesigned nationaljeweler.com, not an entirely new website, but we've been using our time in lockdown productively too. And it's almost like it was a pause, and it was like, for some people it was a needed pause, because this was all stuff, to be honest, that they needed to do to the business anyway. So it's almost like having to close their physical store forced them to adapt online quicker. And I think that, and like I said, I agree with all of you. I'm really amazed and so proud and happy for them, especially all the smaller designers and small mom and pop businesses and their ability to pivot. And, the bigger companies too, because, the bigger companies employ a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that have jobs at those companies. Right. I would also say, I think it's interesting, we've always had this discussion in the industry that, jewelry's biggest rival was experiences and travel. And that was 1000% proven this past year, because that when you took that away, jewelry was the next thing people went for. They didn't go for cars. They didn't go for clothes. People did spend money in their homes because everyone had time to look around and say, oh, I'd like a new couch. I'd like to redecorate. But, jewelry really, for people that have extra money to spend, jewelry rose right to the top. And that's really comforting to see. And I think, there is something about jewelry that people are always going to like jewelry, and people have worn jewelry for thousands of years, and they're always going to like it, and they're always going to want to wear it. And it is, the nice thing about jewelry, when you think about it, it's not garbage. It's not something you just throw away when you're done with clothes. There's a huge waste problem in the clothing industry right now. And you don't have that in jewelry, because you pass it down, you melt it down, you break the stones out, you make something else. It never just ends up in the trash. And that's something I think that will be to jewelry's benefit going forward, particularly as there's more talk about recycling and sustainability. Okay, so thanks everyone. We're not quite done yet. That was a great discussion. And thanks again to our sponsor, Rdi Diamonds. Again, as a reminder, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box. We got quite a few submitted ahead of time, and you can type them in now. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible. While we give people more time to enter their questions, I'm going to say a quick word about Rdi Diamonds. Rdi Diamonds, the selection you want, the quality you need. Thousands of diamonds, that's just the beginning. RDI offers a wide range of services and support to help you succeed. From flexible memo options to a partnership with De Beers Group Industry Services to generous stock options and cost-efficient shipping. RDI's goal is to provide the highest quality of both care and diamonds to your store. Visit rdidiamonds.com today to learn more, and that is rdidiamonds.com. And thank you again to them. So we'll get started with our questions. Give me 1 second. how can independent jewelers benefit from the current social economic situation? Someone wants to know, which I thought was an interesting question.
How can jewelers benefit?
Independent jewelers specifically, and I can start if you want me to. I just didn't want to be the first to jump in. I think right now independent jewelers have a great position because, and I don't know this is true everywhere, but in New York City, there's a big push about saving local businesses and investing in local businesses and shopping local. And there's a little bit, I see in some circles, like a little bit of pushback against big, we won't name any, but particularly like big e-commerce companies that have been putting mom and pop businesses out of work. Or out of business. So I think there's independent jewelers can kind of, join in this wave of people who are looking to shop local and save local businesses, because people see a lot of local businesses, restaurants in particular, are struggling, and there's a lot of momentum around save local businesses, protect local business. We want to support our local businesses, and I see that everywhere. I was actually in a store over the weekend, very exciting trip out, and a woman was shopping with her daughter, and she said and her daughter's like, oh, can't we just find that on this big e-commerce site? And the woman was like, we're boycotting that big e-commerce site right now. And I was like, yeah, like, that's right. Like, give your local hardware store some love, and your local pizzeria, your local pharmacy. And I think that that's something that independent jewelers can take advantage of, because they are also small local businesses. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just say when you're an independent business, you're so nimble. You can jump onto Instagram right now, engage with a bunch of different accounts, get onto your stories and start showing your products. And, as long as you put in that consistent effort into your communications, then your reach is really just, there's no limit to it. The market is saturated, of course, but diligent effort can get you in front of so many people that in the past you would have never been able to connect with. So I would just say how quickly you can change gears or have a new project or a new focus.
You have to run it up the flag chain of 5 levels of executives to get approval.
Yeah, that's my initial thought. And I do think when you're like, but how, when there's so many accounts, it's consistency, just really consistency, and also going online, looking for the information when you're really trying to kind of create that following of what hashtags should you be following, which accounts should you follow or try to partner with or collaborate with, things like that. I think that anything's really possible if you put in the effort.
Someone wants to know, is there concern around buying a piece of jewelry online, buying it without trying it on? So what are kind of viewpoints about buying fine jewelry online?
I mean, it's not a big concern for me to buy jewelry online. I definitely, when I'm buying online, I tend to go with brands that I'm already familiar with. I don't necessarily try a new brand when I'm buying jewelry online. But I apply the same rule to buying jewelry online that I apply to anything I buy online. And I know this is kind of a boring answer, but like, I just always check the return policy. Like, it's really important to read that regardless of the amount of money that you're spending. So if I read the return policy and like, I'm totally fine with that, then I'm comfortable buying regardless of the dollar amount.
And from the retailer's perspective, then it's really important to have a clearly stated return policy posted on your site.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm not dropping a significant amount of money if it's not clear to me what the next step is if I'm not happy with this purchase.
Very good point.
Yeah, that would be my thoughts too. I don't think I've encountered many people saying that was a concern, but I think it just very much depends on the flexibility in terms of, your shipping options, returns and exchanges, what kind of customer service I think you're willing to give them also ahead of that to make sure that they feel comfortable with buying, whether that's, retailers to consumers or within the trade. It seems like it's the same, just trusted relationships and making sure they feel comfortable doing that. But
a few years ago at some education panel that I attended, we were kind of talking about return policies, and it is now so standard for returns and exchanges to be accepted within 30 days that it's really important to adhere to that. I think recently some clothing that I had ordered, it was actually like a 14-day return policy. And I just instantly emailed them and was like, that's really not fair. That wasn't super clear to me. 30 days is really the standard. And, I got my return. So I think it's important just to kind of follow those best practices. Secondly, I would say for jewelry, you just have to show it on a person too, so that people know the scale. But then I think that just all of the data shows that people are totally comfortable to make big fine jewelry purchases online.
I mean, I think too, one thing that's good to point out, and I agree totally, Ashley, about scale. And you wrote about that a couple of years ago when you did your secret shopping as a secret online shopping. I think another thing that's good to point out is, even if people won't complete that final purchase online, you still want to set your website up that brings them right up to the point of purchasing, because maybe they will want to come in the store and try it on, but they'll only want to come in the store and try it on if they're 90% sure from your website that they're going to want to buy it. Because look, everybody that wants to buy anything anymore, how do you start? Like if I want to buy a scratching post for my cat, I Google scratching posts for small apartments. It's how everybody, whatever it is, it's how everybody starts shopping for everything anymore. If you want small gold huggy hoops, like you Google and you see what comes back, and then you start going through, you look at price, you look at, where you can get it. Do I have to go in and get it in person? I look at reviews a lot. Reviews, I think, are also important for websites. Reviews are very important. And I like when I can see other customers' pictures of whatever I'm buying, whether it's a sofa, whether it's, something else for my apartment, whether it's jewelry, so how did this look on someone else? How did someone else utilize this object? So I think reviews and customer photos are important too.
I also think the new filters that they have in some of the social media platforms where you can flip it to selfie. I guess it's on their website. Sorry. You can flip, your camera to selfie and sit there and, actually see the earrings on you. Is such a cool feature, and it's so much fun to play around with. So I feel like that's a cool new thing that.
Virtual try-on. I feel like there's always been this discussion in the industry. Will people really buy fine jewelry online? Yes. Yeah. The answer is yes, they will. And that's only going to, and they'll still want to buy in store, but they're going to get more and more comfortable buying online with stuff like Brecken mentioned, like being able to virtually try it on. And Lenore, I'm sorry, I think you were going to say something.
No.
Oh, okay. So talking about buying online, which everyone has done a lot of during this pandemic, that's for sure. What do you think? Here's an interesting question. Will foot traffic come back?
I definitely think it will. I think, it's obvious, even though we were just saying people will buy online, you're going to buy a lot of things online now. And I think we've gotten to a certain comfort level where people are willing to spend, a lot of money on a piece of fine jewelry. I think also at the same time, what the pandemic has done is made people appreciate, I don't know about you guys, but I really miss just like strolling in shops. And I really miss like that experience, not necessarily like a big retailer, but going downtown and walking around in smaller shops and just in and out and that kind of thing. So I definitely also feel like there will be this sense of wanting to get back out and support small business and, just things that we've missed in the past year. So I have trouble imagining it won't come back. But
I agree with that. I think people are now so stir crazy that everybody wants to be out and about. There are so many neighborhoods in Miami where, you would just never know there's a pandemic if some people weren't wearing masks. So I think foot traffic will be big. I also have been noting different fine jewelry brands that have opened stores since the pandemic started, which is so interesting to me. But it does show you that omni-channel really is the key these days. And we were talking about that, long before the pandemic started, but it's been interesting to see the pandemic kind of test omni-channel, and truly having a mix of in-store and online seems to be the ideal.
Right. But having your shop be really well thought out and really interesting and be an interesting place to go into is very important. And speaking of, Ashley Page Sargison opened a store here in Brooklyn, not too far from me. And when things get a little bit better, I'm actually going to go up there and check it out. But you're right. even people that started out online only or started out as small independent brands are realizing that need to have that physical touch point. I mean, Amazon, look at Amazon. Amazon rules the world, and they want to have bookstores, and they've experimented with grocery stores, and they own Whole Foods, and they've experimented with other different kind of stores. So yeah, and I think, here's the thing about foot traffic. Foot traffic has been on decline for years, but I almost think we could see a surge in foot traffic after the pandemic. And I'm not saying that's going to maintain, but I think we're going to see a surge, because I think, Brecken, you're right. Like, people are going stir crazy, and people just want to get out. Even if they can't order it online, there are going to be those people that just want to get out, and there could be for a while a spike in foot traffic. Now, it might go normalize again and go back to the levels we were used to, say, in like 2019. But I think for a while, like, stores, I mean, when able, stores actually could be crowded. But I mean, we'll have to see about that, because again, I like the trade shows, it depends on the vaccine rollout and people's comfort level with returning to large crowded public spaces. Lenore?
Yeah, no, I agree with all the points that you guys made. I think foot traffic is definitely going to come back. Is it going to be at the exact same levels as before? Now that people have these other options available to them, not that they didn't before, but now that they're more aware of them, more comfortable with using them. I don't know if it'll be back to the exact same levels or better, but I think foot traffic is definitely going to come back. I mean, physical retail is changing for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think just like all you guys said, people still like going into the store. They like browsing, they like shopping around. Some things they prefer to see in person. So yeah, I think foot traffic will be all right.
So someone wants to know, what is the best way to look at new vendors right now? I mean, my answer, I think, would be like this, like Instagram, either Instagram Live or Zoom, or WhatsApp or FaceTime. I mean, there's just so many options. I mean, that would be my answer, some kind of video chatting service. But I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was just going to say social media. I feel like, Instagram, I don't know if you guys would all say the same, but for me, when I'm trying to find new colored stone people, it's just as easy as surfing it, finding new people, finding their page and seeing who they follow and that kind of thing. I think right now, when you can't sort of walk a trade show, I would assume most people that, are serious about their business are there, and like the discover pages, I think, are a great way to do that. I would just dig in on social media, surf those pages.
Yeah, Ashley, you were going to say something?
No, I agree. For discovering new designers, I would say social media. And then, but also for experiencing them, I really think that the line sheets and lookbooks are, I feel like they're almost better than video chat, because the pictures are a lot clearer than what you're going to see on video. Just my personal opinion. And I mean, brands do put a large investment into their imagery and into their line sheets and lookbooks. And I think that now, because of the lack of in-person appointments, I think those assets are kind of more important than ever. So I think never feel shy to just request those from the brands you're finding.
And what do you think is more prevalent now? E-line sheets and lookbooks, or like physically like mail them to me?
No, ones that you can email for sure.
Okay. You don't like anything mailed, do you? I know that.
I don't like any paper.
I know that about you. I do, though. I would say, like, I'm obviously not a designer or store buying jewelry, but I still look at catalogs. I get catalogs in the mail somewhat randomly, and I really like looking at catalogs, like physically looking through the catalog, but that's just me. Lenore, any thoughts on seeing new vendors?
No, I would echo what Brecken and Ashley have said. I think social media is a great way to look through people, see what they have to offer. And there's obviously so many ways to connect with people now. We've figured that out, whether it's Zoom or Instagram Live or Facebook Live or whatever it is. I think social media is your best bet.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. There's one last question. Someone wants to know, and I think this is a really interesting question that we haven't answered yet. Are trade shows necessary for all parties involved? What we talked about earlier was, will they happen, how they happen? But this is a different question. Are trade shows necessary? And I think for me, there's two parts to this answer.
Do you want to start, Michelle?
Oh, sure. So I think the answer would be, if you're asking if something's necessary, I don't know that they're necessary anymore, like in the sense of, if we don't do this, there'd be no other way for the industry to do business. I mean, years ago, sure, because like years ago, there were tons of traveling salesmen, and they would, go around visiting stores, showing them the new watches, the new line, the new chains. And that obviously, we don't have those anymore. And trade shows are a way for, vendors to reach a lot of retailers to see a lot of vendors all in one space. Is that necessary anymore? Like, no, I think there's plenty of other tools like we just discussed to see new vendors. But them not being necessary doesn't mean they won't be around. I think that there is a social element, like we just mentioned with shopping in stores, that, yeah, you could buy everything online, but everybody has seen what staying home all the time and buying everything online and never going out looks like, and nobody likes it. And I still think it's the same thing with Vegas. Every year Vegas comes around and everybody's like, oh, Vegas, it's so exhausting. My feet, like the desert is dry, blah, blah, blah. But, I think now that we see what it's like not to have anywhere to go and never see anybody, I think people are seeing that, oh, I do like seeing people and I do like getting out of the house. So are they 1,000% necessary? No, they're not necessary, but they will continue, because this is not a substitute, for me anyway, for in-person contact with people. Like this can never replace like seeing people in person and getting together and having a drink off the show floor after a busy day. I mean, there's just great conversations, and you just can't replace that on Zoom, even though it's nice that we have this to keep up with people this way. And we're so fortunate in a way that this pandemic hit at a time where we do have all these technologies that help keep business going. But I think at the end of the day, like, nobody wants to do everything over the internet anymore. But that's just my opinion as the woman on this call who just said she looks at regular catalogs.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I think I'll reiterate what you said, Michelle. I agree that I don't think that they are necessary in that same way that you said, but I don't think that they're going anywhere. When I was speaking to a lot of people in my Tucson, just to go back to Tucson again, I think there's so much to be said, not only for being there and networking with people, you get to know them on a personal level, and that helps your business too. And then there's also this aspect of discovery. And sometimes you don't want to be on your phone searching Instagram forever. I think for a lot of gemstone people, just walking the tents is, you find material that you wouldn't necessarily find online. There's just sort of the ability to get your name out there and name recognition as well. So whether or not people are doing the same amount of business as the cost of the show is one thing, but I think that they'll stay, maybe not the amount we have now, and maybe people will go more regional and that kind of thing and sort of specialize. But I think we can all, like you said, we can all agree that we want to see each other and we want to be back in person. So I think there's definitely will always be that aspect.
Yeah, I think humans will always want human contact and so we're social creatures, and that's not going to change, no matter how many computer programs there are. Ashley?
It is also hugely convenient to go stone shopping, and like Brecken said, where you want to find some new vendors. If you're at this show that you really trust and you've built relationships there, you also just trust the show itself for finding new people rather than having to go through Instagram and do so much more research. And I think of the new designer area at Couture, where it's almost everyone's favorite stop because it's already so convenient for a certain store to go place their orders with these like 8 different brands that are huge for them, but then they love to just peek through, see who else is there, and it's kind of like the show's done some of the vetting for them. So I do see it as being a huge measure of convenience. And then luckily shows do a really good job of having, whether it's educational programming or it's really cool, fun social events, things that kind of make it more worth your while, and, creating that community like you guys are saying. I think just that's been really important to keeping them relevant.
Yeah, I mean, this first thing that popped in my mind, Ashley, when you said that was the candy bar at Couture at the opening night party, and Brecken filling her purse like grandma.
Don't say that on the webinar. No, I do miss.
Who doesn't love that? I'm always excited for Vegas. I love getting my steps in, and I love the desert. So
yeah,
there you go.
Good to me.
I love having candy in my room when there's like nothing else to eat. Lenore, thoughts on necessary or not necessary trade shows as someone who is pretty new to trade shows?
Pretty new to the trade show scene, yes. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I don't know that, are they necessary in a business sense, whereas, oh, I won't be able to conduct my business without them? No. But I also don't think that there is a substitute for like human connection and interacting with people and seeing people. And definitely, you know, for my purposes, like when I go to different trade shows, it is to meet people and to network and get that connection so that, you know, months later when I'm back in New York and I'm working on a story, you know, I'm not cold calling people. I'm not just like finding your email on your website and reaching out to you. Like I've spoken to you and I know you and I know that you're a good person to talk to about, you know, whatever it is that I'm working on.
Right.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I like meeting people. I like getting my face out there and getting people, you know, just connecting with people in a more like personal one-on-one level.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lenore. It's like, imagine trying to be new, you know, in the industry and not having those as well. Like, I think we all probably use the trade shows for that. I mean, my first Tucson, well, I wouldn't count that because I was 3 months in and I sort of didn't really realize what was happening, but I can't imagine not having Tucson for someone to say, oh, here's this person right here that you should go talk to as well. And like, here's this, you know, just the exchange of knowledge and connections. I don't know how you would do that without.
Right.
And I mean, you can find people online, but for me, everything that's online kind of gets lost in a fog where I'm more likely to remember, oh yeah, like we're doing a story now about jewelers at XYZ. And I remember talking to this jeweler at Conclave at an after party about he does that. I have this card, let me call him. And sometimes too, I'll even take people's cards and write little notes on them. Be like, met at Conclave, like little interesting note about what was interesting about their story. And then it's like, I don't catalog things because I feel like everything online just kind of ends up like meshing in my head.
Right.
Anyway, well, thanks again, everyone. Brecken, Ashley, Lenore, it's been a year, hasn't it?
Ooh, yes, it has.
Everyone has hung in. Everyone is doing well. We're still all healthy and well, and that's really the most important things. So thanks again to you three. Couldn't do it without you, absolutely. And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. You can catch another episode of My Next Question next Tuesday, March 16th at 2 p.m. Lenore is up, and she's going to be interviewing the CEO of OLARC, Ben Congleton, about website chat features, specifically why your website today needs to have a chat feature. So I think that's one a lot of retailers should tune in for. You can read more about it and register at nationaljeweler.com/webinars. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.